Borrow whatever you want. Put it back on the I saw one I was saying
for the same.
fair.
If you didn't sign in too, it's helpful to have you sign in. I think we sign every day. Who said that? Hey, it's. Let me start over. Okay, at the workshop yesterday, somebody took a picture of the diagram on the ground. Remember who that was? Somebody was, and I meant to, but I forgot. And I filled it all out. Yeah, that's right. No, I wasn't even thinking about it until this morning. I was like, oh. I'm sure we could. Yeah,
and everybody's there, and anybody who's friends all by themselves.
There you go.
I said, don't let me know if I'm just and I'm not going to
Yeah, right. Yeah, I gotta go home before that. So.
Last night, right? Yeah, I thought I spent sitting in my I just think that myself. I used to call him. I think we spoke briefly in the meeting last year about but I was impressed. We have a full 10 minutes, I appreciate that, though, honestly. It's hard to think
Okay, let's do the transition. Lost it.
What's your shirt say?
There's a sale at Lowe's and YouTube TV is on sale for $60 a month.
Thank you. She looks pretty practical. She's technically like
She made me really well. I don't know about that one, so I'm still pretty ignorant right now. It's quite a bit
Okay, the other thing is
you know it's there.
grab a hymnal, grab a hymnal, grab a hymnal. Morning.
You saving the seat?
For you?
Grab a hymnal.
Sorry.
Got it. Get it. But Sean, good job.
Just for today till about mid-afternoon. Yeah, I'm glad to be
Good morning, friends. Nick, we on here? Yeah, thank you. Good morning, and thank you for bringing us in. Grab a hymnal if you didn't already. We're glad that you're here and looking bright-eyed. Everybody got a little better sleep because of the cooler weather? Yeah, good. You get tired enough, you can sleep anywhere, right?
Yeah, I have to wake up before breakfast today.
So when Mark Tote gets sat down, we'll get started. And
Hey, I'm socializing.
yeah, I noticed. So I don't have a lot in the way of announcements today. We will have a time gathering right after lunch for those of you who are interested in talking about and kind of, I'm using the term remembering. You know, when we lose people, when people die that have been important to us, there's an opportunity to remember, but to really think about that word and really kind of put back together in many ways the memories of people and have opportunity to talk about that today. So that'll be at 1 in here and for about probably about 45 minutes, and then we'll have the FUN presentation this afternoon after lunch around 2 o'clock. So for those of you who would like to do that, and then there'll be free time and activities. There'll be a couple of hikes and things like that available that we'll let you know about. So glad that you are here, and we're going to, yes.
Well, I want to remind friends that you can remember the people who are still living but not able to be here.
Yes.
By signing.
It's a good way to say it, Peggy. Every year, Peggy brings opportunities.
I'm appointed to do that.
Well, and yes, and you do it so well.
Where are they?
They're over on the table over here, and you can come and send your greetings to people who are not able to be here but often are, or we kind of hold in our hearts that we miss having you here. So I think we're going to sing together, and then we'll let Brandon come and introduce our speaker after a couple songs. So let's do that.
Good morning. We'll start by turning to number 90 in our hymnal. Wow, good one, Mom. All right, we are turning to number 90 in our hymnal. There's apparently 2 different stand. You're not too comfortable.
Down the clouds of sin and
us with mercy's hand, ever singing, marching onward, victors in the midst of strife. Joyful music leads us onward in the triumph song of life.
I wasn't sure I was going on to the optional last stanza. Oh, good. Does anybody have a favorite phrase or verse out of that song that you want to shout out?
The third verse, third line, thou art Father, Christ our brother, all who live in thy heart are
All who live in love. Yes.
I like the next phrase, you just how to love each other. This doesn't give it joy. Joyful music leads us sunward. I would say S-O-N.
Yes. That's great imagery. Well, if you're already standing, stay however you're comfortable. But the next song, I feel I need to stand up for. It's 549, Higher Ground. And pressing on the upward way.
Pressing on the upward way, every day, still praying as I'm older now. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand. My faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. My heart has no desire to stay, where doubts arise and fears dismay. But some may dwell where these abound. My prayer, my aim is higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand. My faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to live above the world, though Satan's stars at me are hurled. For faith has taught that joyful sound, the song of saints on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand. By faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to scale the utmost high and catch a gleam of glory bright. But still I'll pray till heaven I found. Lord, lead me on to higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand. By faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground.
Okay, good morning. Good morning. I was going to pause there, so I didn't know if I would be introduced before I got to introduce myself. So, yeah, Sean didn't know how to Sean. So, it's, they asked me if I would introduce Michael. And I don't know, other than his mom, who's there she is. I don't know how many people have known him longer than me. A couple. Oh, yeah. So, Michael, or as he was known on camp staff as Niche, which was his French class name in high school, I think, and so that's what we knew him as for many years. But so my mom always used to say Michael, introduce him. But we started working together here in 1996, and my wife and I, Amy and I, had met here in 1994. We had a wedding here in 96, just right about where I'm standing right now. And I think, if I remember right, you rang the bell. That it was you said I do, and so he was down there and rang the bell at our wedding. So I then he proceeded to throw a lot of ice into our car. Well, not just him, others. But that's how it's going. I don't know what it was. No, I have video. I actually have pictures and video. But we worked together for many years. And we would joke that because of the long hours we worked together, we of course spent a lot of time together than with our wives. And so we got to know one another, lots of deep conversations, and we just met here at the into some parallel places there. So Michael's been a good friend, and his kids and my kids have served on camp staff together, and through the years, we've always enjoyed doing that together, talking and spending time together. So I'm honored to introduce him here, blessing him in sessions and having him speak. And he's a good friend and a deep thinker, and I don't always fathom all of what he puts on Facebook. Maybe I'm not a deep thinker, but I sure appreciate him and following him out here. So.
A little bit of each. So, when I started working here, we got paid on Wednesday, I think, or something along that line. Brandon and I banked at the same bank, and that bank was in Goshen. So, yeah, that was. This will be hard to remember. So we banked at the same bank in Goshen, and so we went together to deposit our massive paychecks. I think they didn't have triple digits yet. But as we were leaving the bank and pulling back onto the highway, I was driving a 1987 Ford Escort manual transmission, beautiful sand-colored vehicle, and I did not go. And I had every intention of going. And when I didn't go, a dump truck, or I think it was a trash truck, went by in front of us. And Brandon didn't know that something had saved at least my life, probably both of our lives. I was thinking about the consequences of that moment last night. It's just, you get moments of pivot. Kelly used that phrase last night. Brandon and I would work 12-hour days, and then we would go home and play cards together. And our wives could not figure out why we would like spending that much time together. I told you yesterday that I put all the nails in the ceiling I also made and fastened the ductwork in the ceiling. Not that I knew how to do that, but somebody told me how to do that and guided me through the process. In this room, I spent probably 2 months on scaffolding, keeping track of Larry and Gary's tools. That half of the value I provided was I knew where the tools were, so when I needed something, I could figure it out. But also in this room, I was here when Larry found out his father died. And I held him while he cried, memorializing his father. We did a lot of work, but as Brandon said, it is not just work. It is connection. It is relationship. It is fellowship. Every so often, Brandon will put a picture of him scrubbing the tiles in the bathhouse. And I think the first one he put on there, I started to talk about the importance of making sure the tiles next to the wall and around the corners are clean, as well as in the walkway. He responded with, "Quit." That's enough of that. We're just cleaning floors here. Sometime along in our tenure here, Brandon was doing, what were you doing in the tree farm when you climbed that tree and fell out? Just trying to get a look.
We were climbing trees.
Yeah. So Brandon was just climbing trees, and he got up to the top of a tree and fell out of it, and you never heard about it because he didn't hurt himself. And I thought that was interesting and cool, and so I did the same thing about a month later. And it was fantastic. I don't recommend doing it on purpose, but that was just awesome. It was a pine tree, so it had layers of branches and leaves, or needles, and so you'd go, keep your legs together. But you would just go drop for a little bit, and then the branches would slow you down, and you would drop some more, and they'd slow you down, and eventually you hit the ground, and it's nice soft pine needles. And again, I don't recommend doing that, but I have rarely felt as held by the presence of God as I did in those 30 feet dropping from the top of that tree. Mine was a little more dominant than Brandon's. I think he did his on accident, but I was doing something not terribly right. We can talk about what it was later. As we sang, "Joyful, joyful, we adore thee," the piece, I think, in the, I'm not going to get it, I think it's verse 3, it talks about being drawn sunward and being reflecting on nature and having that impact us in our relationship with God. I started to well up because that was the experience here for me, is that we were creating a place for people to come close to the presence of God. In the process, it was a place where I came close to the presence of God. All of us are not finished products, but the opportunity to, and really we did, we worked so many hours together, Brandon and I, but the opportunity to be in conversation and connection and engage in feedback with someone was just invaluable. I am, or have been, and may continue to be at some point, quite arrogant and strong-willed and full-headed, and Brandon is also. And that was a deep blessing. So we're going to run through some slides and we'll see what we get. The invitational topic for this morning was renewal. And the verse in Romans says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that's the piece I want to talk about, is what and how are we renewed? How are we transformed by the renewing of our mind? What happens when our minds are renewed? Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. I used to be someone who would not change their mind unless there was a sledgehammer or a 2x4 applied to promote thought. There are passages in Scripture. This is one for Proverbs 3. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And then in Isaiah 55, 8 and 9, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways my ways. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And then in Matthew 16, 24 and 25, and then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone wants to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Each of those passages reminds us or tells us that we need to think differently. It is our minds that get in the way of us experiencing the presence of God. What I know is often not what God knows. What I know is often not what God needs me to know. What I know is often not the thing that I need to know. However, so I want to ask this question. I'm going to ask people what their favorite parts of Joyful were. What does it feel like to be wrong? And feel free to answer. Humble. Embarrassed. Shameful.
Rare.
Rarely not true.
Sometimes you're embarrassed by yourself and you realize it,
Yeah.
or you're right here and you miss it.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
So Sue said it's whether you're with people or you don't have an audience is a difference. I remember one Sunday morning in the middle of winter getting up and taking my laptop over to the church. We lived 4 feet away, so it was just a quick journey. And I stepped down on the sidewalk onto a patch of ice. And I went this way and my laptop went out in the parking lot. And my first thought was, I hope nobody saw that. And my second thought was, the person across the street was walking their dog and she is just dying laughing. So yes, it's a big difference between privately and publicly. What I want to suggest, though, is that being wrong feels exactly like being right. What we recognize as the feeling of wrong is when we realize we're wrong. We are wrong all the time. All of you are wrong about something right now, and you feel fine about it. Me too. Being wrong feels the same as being right. Finding out we're wrong. Going through the process of recognizing error, mistake, misunderstanding feels like all of those things that we talk about. Humbling, frustrating, annoying, confusing maybe. Creativity belongs to the artist in each of us. To create means to relate. The root meaning of the word art is to fit together, and we all do this every day. So some of what you're going to get this morning will happen at Stoking the Fire the middle of the month, earlier this month. And it is from a book called Art and Fear, and Sylvia read it during a little bit of it during Stoking the Fire, and she articulated the connected piece she did the creativity part a little better than I did. She said, every one of you, whether you have claimed it or not, has an artist within you. And our art, our process of doing art is, and then she said, is the same as our Christianity. And she went through and replaced some of the phrases from the book with the word, instead of artist, replaced it with Christian. When I read the book for the first time, I thought, this is the work of a pastor. And I think Sylvia is more correct. This is the work of Christianity. This is the work of relationship. This is the work of engagement. All of you have met Bob Carter. You have all now met me. Do you realize that he and I are basically twins? I didn't. And Bob didn't until we spent a week together in Belize. And we talked about the things we think about that. I don't know if it's scary to you, Bob, but it is a little frightening to me when my thoughts come out of Bob's mouth. I never would have thought it until that moment. So we're going to get some quotes out of the book Art and Fear, and you're going to get to look at some of my art. So these are bowls that I have created, and they're helpful in instruction. So, becoming an artist, becoming a Christian consists of learning to accept yourself, which makes your work personal, and in following your own voice, which makes your work distinctive. Becoming a Christian consists of learning to accept yourself. What does that mean? Well, I think Olivia pointed this out. It doesn't mean that we just highlight the wonderful parts, but it means seeing the truth of who we are, identifying the weakness and the strength of the reality of us. God has already done it. God has said, I see you, I love you, I want to bring you into relationship with me. God didn't say, I'll see you in a couple of years when you fix these things, and then we can have a conversation. God says, I made you, I created you, I see you as you are, and I'm ready for relationship. And we have to come to that realization for ourselves. We would rather not see ourselves. But there are things about us that we don't want other people to know. Recently, my oldest child graduated from college. We went to New York, stayed in an Airbnb in New Jersey, and did New York things for a week, and then we came back. The Monday we came back, the rest of my family left the Airbnb. I was there to close up and then go get my daughter and her stuff and leave stuff driving back to Indiana. The first thing I did after they left for the airport was I was going to take out some trash and I was going to prop the door open. Yeah. and just run back in. And you already know how it ended up. You want to know what I did first? And I'm really sort of proud of this, but also embarrassed by this. I got in the rental car, and I knew that it was connected to my phone at one time, and I turned the rental car on. For some reason, I had keys to that, and I tried to get it to connect to my phone so I could use the car to access my text messages so I could get the code to get back in the building and not let anybody know what had happened. That's the part I'm not so proud of. I was really proud of that. Maybe this will work. So I didn't have my phone. I did have the car, and I was thinking, where can I go? What can I do? I didn't have my wallet to make that connection. The next door neighbor came out, and I was polite enough to let him use his phone, and I got a hold of my wife, and she gave me the code, and I get back in. But learning to accept myself as someone who does something so stupid, I haven't been that mad at myself in years. All you can work on today is directly in front of you. Your job is to develop an imagination of the possible. What does that mean? You can guess if you want. Yesterday, I noticed that I saw witnessed an interaction, and I noticed that there was a response that was I could notice it was noteworthy. And sometime later, I communicated the noteworthy thing I noticed. And the person that I communicated that to, immediately went to the other person and apologized. And I was just touched by that. All you can work on today is directly in front of you. And I would say all you need to work on is directly in front of you. You cannot necessarily work on the things that you cannot work on. But if there is something in front of you that is there, you can use it for that. I want to highlight the word imagination. We don't imagine very well. We are, in fact, trained not to imagine. I don't know if you've heard the story of a little girl in kindergarten who's drawing at the back of a room, and the teacher comes along and says, "What are you drawing?" And the little girl says, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher says, "Well, we don't know what God looks like." And the little girl says, "You will in a minute." Making art provides uncomfortably accurate feedback about the gap that inevitably exists between you, what you intended to do, and what you did. And your job is to learn to work on your work. Christianity, relationships, provide uncomfortably accurate feedback about the gap that inevitably exists between what you intended to do and what you did. I intended for this to happen. What actually happened was this over here. What was it? Why this distance? What's going on? Was it these things? Was it this piece of information? Was it the way I said it? Was it the fact that is it the fact of the reality of who I am that caused that issue? Do you remember last year at yearly meeting sessions when Rachel gave the message on Sunday morning? I don't really remember what she talked about. Well, all of you. I don't know if you remember what you talked about. Do you? She talked about compost, and she talked about turning things over. And so afterwards, in my cleverness, the depth of my cleverness, I went over to her and said, "That is crap." And she got this look in her face, and I realized I hadn't quite set the tone of that comment. And then I said, "But I'm going to turn it over, and hopefully it'll make something valuable." Because I had listened to what she said. But that introduction to that comment there was some trepidation in that. So, sometime in the past year, Rachel sent a message on a Zoom call we were combined in, and she said, "I realized that one of the highest compliments is to be pestered or harassed by you." I really felt seen. I really enjoyed that comment. The truth is that the piece of art which seems so profoundly right in its finished state may earlier have been only inches or seconds away from total collapse. That if I hadn't been fast enough, Rachel would have only remembered that message that I'm quarter-hearted to. I said it was just crap. Often, that's how our relationships end. That if we don't do the work of paying attention, engaging, understanding, witnessing, seeing one another, it's just so fragile sometimes. We don't know what's going on We don't know what impact our words can make, and you have to be careful. So, you can translate that into your relationships, your engagements, your yeah. The lessons you are meant to learn are in your work. The lessons you are meant to learn are in your life. To see them, you need only to look at the work clearly, without judgment, without need or fear, without wishes or hopes, without emotional expectations. Ask your work what it needs, not what you need. Then set aside your fears and listen. So the picture behind it, that is a piece of bird's eye maple burl. It was on a tree that was slotted to be cut down by the power company at 10 feet north of my yard. It's not very big. It was about that big when it came off of the tree. And that's about as big a thing that you could make out of something like that. I'm not terribly happy with that. One of the things I realized is I don't like birds and maple. I said that, and Kelly was like, "But I could make pins out of that. I could make something I really like." To see the work in front of us, we have to look at it without judgment. Somebody said, we talked about in Sean's session, the voices in our head that tell us things. And that we need to look at what's in front of us without listening to that voice, to see accurately what's going on. And to see those situations without a need. I need to see myself in a certain way. I need to see myself as the hero, or you need to see myself as the victim, or however you engage. To look without fear. If they know what's really going on, will I be accepted? Does this impact my self-worth? Does this impact my place? Does this impact my identity? Without emotional expectations, ask your life what it needs. Ask the relationship what it needs. Ask the individual what they need. And engage. Set aside your fears and listen. It's often really hard to do. The undeniable fact is that your life is not some residue left when you subtract all the things you haven't done. It is the full payoff for all the things that you have done. You ever heard the story of the plumber who came in on a call and was there for 5 minutes, took his hammer out, tapped something on the wall, and charged the lady $250, and she complained and said, "That's outrageous for 5 seconds worth of work." And he said, "See, what you're paying for, you've got $15 for the 5 seconds worth of work, but you're also paying the $235 for the history and understanding to know exactly when to tap the hammer." And that's a beneficial illustration. There's also the other side of that, is that when we fail, when we find a gap of misunderstanding or difficulty, that is also an undeniable fact that our life is not some residue left over when you subtract all the things you haven't done. Our lives produce exactly what they're meant to produce because our work is in front of us, and so when we produce the things that we produce, we're available to do the work that we need to be doing. This is the wallet catcher from my youngest child. It is a maple burl. I don't know why it's black on the inside. And I would it's pretty, but I would do it over. I don't like it, and that's part of that process. The ends of it are too big. It's finished very nicely. It's very smoothly sanded, but the ends are too thick, and I could have been more careful there. What is important about each new piece of art is not whether it is better or worse than your previous efforts. What is important is the ways in which it is similar or different. Often, we want what we produce to be perfect. And perfect is not the goal. Perfect is inhuman. Perfect is inhuman. And so when we are endeavoring to create perfection, we are not dealing with the reality of us. And so why the ways in which things are similar or different is because we as we engage the world, as we move through however long we've been here, have this collection of experiences, collections of understandings, collections of engagement that we have familiar with, that we think about, that we process, or I don't know, we run through a memory dial. But it's identifying this engagement with this way of showing what was different between these two, what was the same, what was the outcome, was that different, was this different, and how did that work? And that is the process with love your neighbor as yourself. The invitation is, how does my neighbor need to be loved? If I love all my neighbors the same way I love my family, is that going to work out? The answer is no. So I have to figure out, okay, I met Sean. I met Sean in Newburgh, Oregon, and I told him that my uncle was Stuart Griffith. And he looked at Colin Saxon and said, there's no way that's true. And Colin said, yes, in fact, that is true. Stuart and I are not twins, the way Bob and I are twins. But I had to figure out what it is that in a relationship that Sean would like to find valuable, what it is that what's the currency of engagement. What I came to realize is he really looks up to me, especially if I'm standing on the stage. But we share a fairly similar sense of humor, so we can get ourselves into trouble. With other people, we'll be fine. Other people might not be as happy, and so we have to figure out how is this engagement different than the same. Making art and viewing art are different at their core. Your job is to learn to work on your art. What are some of the art things that you do? Kelly makes wooden pens, handmade wooden pens. Quilting, embroidery, military. What's that?
Military plaques.
Military plaques. When we look at something, engage with it, we are not doing the internal work of process. We're not doing the thought process. So that bowl is a maple burl. The burl it came off of was a part of probably 2,000 pounds of burl that came off of one tree. That piece of wood was dead when I cut it off the tree, and you can see there, baby, the gray on the edge on the right side. When I did 3 of these bowls in similar pieces of wood, all of them have that line across the middle. And I have no idea what's going on here. Because it's not it actually may be 2 burls, but they all had a line down the middle of it. And so part of the working process is to figure out what's going on. Do I like that line? Do I want to highlight that line? Are there things I can do to make that appear more clearly so that when it's engaged with it is more visible? Or do I not like that line? Do I want to do some things that hide that thing? Because I don't want it to be seen, I don't want it to be visible. When we are viewing art, we are not asking the process questions. We're not asking the messy questions. We're not asking the engagement questions. We're asking, do I like it? Is that appealing? How does that make me feel? In making art, in being a Christian, you need to give yourself room to respond authentically, both to your subject matter and to your material. Christianity happens between you and something, a subject, an idea, a technique, and both you and that something need to be free to move. This one is a little more difficult because we all know the rules of Quaker Christianity. We all know the rules of yearly meeting sessions. We all know correct behavior. We all, whether we choose to comply, we all have a sense of right behavior. Somebody came in and said, I'm going to sneak by you, and I said, no, you cannot sneak here. I already saw you coming. You're not sneaking. And then he said, no sneaking in your meeting. And I thought that might be a very nice next year's thing. No sneaking in yearly meetings. So what does it look like to have freedom to respond authentically? Do we give ourselves that permission? Are we able to say or behave or react in situations and then respond with a depth of authenticity without judgment or fear or worry? Can I say what I'm thinking? Can I bring the truth of who I am, the presence of God, to the presence of the gathered community? Am I free to engage? Look at your work, and it will tell you, look at your life, and it will tell you how it is when you hold back or when you embrace. When you are lazy, your art is lazy. When you are lazy, your life is lazy. When you hold back, your life holds back. When you hesitate, your life stands there staring at you, your hands in its pockets. But when you commit, comes on like blue. I worked at Quaker Haven from 96 to 99 in the summers, and then full time for 99 through 2003. I have, with a caveat, I have never been more committed to the presence of God than in those years. I have consistently been frustrated by church engagement that is not as committed as the time I spent here. I was willingly with Brandon 12 hours a day, and then sometimes afterwards, 6 days a week. And we lived less than 5 miles apart. We went to church together, we worked together, we served on church committees together. And that commitment was extraordinary, was dynamic. I don't know if you pay attention to, and I don't know how consistent it is, but in 95, 96, Jesse met his wife and got married. Brandon met his wife and got married. I met my wife and got married. There was another couple from that era, Amos and Michelle met in that era and got married. And then in the next few years, we had several staff after that who found significant people. And one of the reasons why these were effective and good is that, like, for my marriage, I saw my wife walk into the back door of the kitchen after 4 hours lifeguarding, and her hair could touch both walls of the 4-foot wall. It had been windy that day, and she showed up the most awful I've ever seen her, but she glowed. I was smitten in that moment because I saw there was no hiding, there was no pretense. We were able to look at each other and see what good teachers offer their students, what good pastors offer their congregation, what good Christians offer their relationships is something akin to the vulnerability found in a personal relationship. A kind of artistic and intellectual intimacy that lets others see how they reach a specific point. And I think this is incredibly important for our life and growth of the Quaker movement, is that we need to be invested and involved in sharing the process of how we get to where we're at, rather than just the finish line. None of us are done. I can tell because you're breathing. None of us have arrived at where God is calling us to be. All of us have work to do. But in order for us to be good teachers, good leaders, good examples, we need to offer the truth of how we're moving through the process of growing in our spiritual lives. And maybe, this one's harder, and articulating the truth when we're not growing in our spiritual lives. Because maybe somebody else has been there and has some experience to talk about in the process of growth. Not simply that you got there, but how. What was going on? What was the wrestling? What was the engagement? So this is a thought that just popped into my head. You can do with it what you want. I would have been fired sooner if Jerry had heard what Brandon and I were talking about most of the time. It is that willingness to lay open the line that runs between their life and their work, their art, their Christianity, their vocation, their calling, that gives meaning to how, what, and how, and empowerment to artistic goals that for the student may lie many years distant. So imagine somebody looking at the venerable Sean McConaughey and thinking, I want my life to be just like that. And it's not hard to do. It may be harder for Sean, but Sean does wonderful things. And somebody goes about getting there, but they don't have any idea about the journey. They just have a sense of the goal. They don't know the steps. They don't know how many times Sean has fallen on his face with miserable failure, and it's a lot. It's almost as many as I have. Learning is the natural reward of meetings with remarkable ideas and remarkable people. One day, we can make up in 2002, Brandon and I spent 5 minutes stacking cups into the cup trays in the dish room. And we had this thought that when you do them quickly, and you get 36 cups in a tray. I don't know if you do this. There's a lot of space in the diagonals between the cups. So if you can stack the cups in there and they fit into those open spaces, you can get, it's 38, right? 38 or 39 cups in a tray. But it takes twice as long. And so Brandon said at the end of that, says, well, there's no solution to that, so we're not going to make any changes. But we had an idea, not terribly remarkable, it's cups in the dish room. But we investigated, we tried it out, and we did a lot of that stuff in our time. Brandon might be able to tell you about some of the philosophy of picking raspberries if you ask him. None of which are his. He just thought they tasted good. You have a choice. No. You can do much worse. Somebody said it's like a roast. You have a choice, or more accurately, a rolling tangle of choices between giving your work your best shot and risking that it will not make you happy or not giving you the best shot and thereby guaranteeing that it will not make you happy. It becomes a choice between certainty and uncertainty, and I think the terminology, the wording there is very important. The choice at life is uncertainty. The choice at death is certainty. And curiously, uncertainty is the comforting choice. Our lives are invested in our willingness to be uncertain about the outcome of our lives. What's going to happen if I do this? What's going to happen if I hope this direction? What's going to happen if I use the tool this way? I don't know. I think I know. Let's find out. We don't change our minds unless we have to. We need to change our minds so that we can find a future that is alive, a future that is engaged with the presence of God, a future that brings each of us alive in the process, that invites our fullness into each moment. It is not a mathematical equation. There's no product mean function that gives us the right investments so that our line goes perfectly up and creates success. It is messy and confusing, and it is those are the things that bring the transformation in our minds so that we can know the good and perfect will of God. Trying that by investigating, by telling a joke, seeing what happens. Is that respond well? Usually, yes.
option number 1, I see together the 5, 6, and 8. Even my vision.
Father, thank you for meeting with us here, being present. Thank you for the opportunity to consider our lives and our lives with you. And go with us as we move into our time of business. Help us to hear you clearly, to consider you, and to consider one another as we meet together. In your name, amen.
Amen.
10 minutes and we'll begin worship. Or business. For business. Make business plan. No chance of that.
I'm wonderful. How are you? Yes. I did. I couldn't. It seemed like everybody was occupied.